Happy to have you with us. I was thinking this morning as I was putting the show together about something that was said to me a long, well, I'll just leave it there because if I say one more long, then it won't reflect very well on me. But it was a long time ago when a journalism professor of mine, in fact, I think it was my very first journalism professor at Ohio State, said to me and my fellow classmates, one of whom is current Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost, in journalism, we write about the plane that crashes. We don't write about the plane that flies. The upshot of that comment was that in news, we cover things that are out of the ordinary, not typical, the exception rather than the rule. So I'm a little bit torn today as to whether I should lead with the story that I was going to talk about because it involves, very sadly, the death of a 14-year-old girl yesterday about noon. While we were doing this show, 14-year-old Haley Abshire lost her life in a fiery accident on the city's west side, which involved at least one and possibly two cars stolen from West High School. Now, I'm going to presume they're still in school at West High School. My kids are still in school. It's awfully early for kids to be out of high school. I mean, colleges, yes. High school, not so much. We do not know if Haley Abshire was an innocent bystander in a car. She was in the SUV. The other car was a Hyundai Sonata. We all know about the history of Hyundais and Kias in this town and their propensity for being stolen by juveniles. But again, I wasn't sure whether I should lead with this or not. I definitely want to be sensitive to Haley Abshire's family because they are in mourning, as all of us would be, if something, not just something, but the worst thing possible happened to our daughter, that she died. And in this instance, died in a car crash involving a stolen car. We don't know if her car was stolen or not. We know that one of the cars was stolen, and we also know that after the crash, young men were observed running from the scene and scaling a fence and leaving. Now, those young men are still at large. So why would I not talk about this as a lead story? Because as my journalism professor told me a long time ago, we write about the plane that crashes, not about the plane that flies. We write about things that are unusual, that are atypical. And sadly, we're at a point where what happened to Haley Abshire, what happened as a result of a car, maybe two, being stolen from West High School, and teenage boys running from the scene of the accident that claimed an innocent life, has ceased to be news in this town. It is all too typical. It is, this circumstance, the plane that flies. It is all too normal. Far too normal. Doesn't give me any joy to say that. I shouldn't have to say it. It shouldn't be true, but it is true. And it is true not just because we have an array of young people in our town who are poorly parented or who have made poor choices with their life, or both. It is true because the adults in this city who are charged with protecting the rest of us, protecting Haley Abshire from this kind of unnecessary violence and mayhem, because the adults in this town have completely abdicated their responsibility to stop this nonsense. I've brought it up before. I'm going to bring it up again. I don't bring it up as often or as routinely as planes reach their destination safely without crashing. But it is, in my view, inarguable to continue to talk about the abundance of stolen cars in our city, around 10,000 a year, to continue to talk about young people in our city less than 25 years old, before their brains are fully developed, dying because of their own poor choices or because of the poor conditions which they grow up in that tempt them to make desperate choices. I'm not going to say cause them, because everybody's responsible for their own decisions. And certainly everyone knows right from wrong. It's planted in every heart. God says he plants his truth in every human heart. So I'm not blaming entirely the decisions of these young people on factors outside their own cognitive recognition of what's right and wrong, because they have that and they should conform to that, but they often don't. But I'm sure that Juvenile Court Judge Kim A. Brown is having a good day today. I'm sure that all the other 6 Juvenile Court judges are having a good day today. And I'm also sure nobody else will bring up to them the letter that they signed in February of 2021 when Columbus police tried to crack down on this kind of stuff. And they were essentially labeled racists for doing it. Remember back then, the police had an operation they wanted to engage in, or they were engaging in, called Operation Game Over, which was to send a message to a select group of teenagers, 40 of them, who had committed an outlandish number of crimes in our city. These 40 juveniles were suspected of 130 purse snatchings. That's more than 3 per juvenile. 130 delinquency charges, 22 robberies, 11 kidnappings, 28 counts of receiving stolen property, 9 aggravated robberies, and one of them was facing an attempted murder charge. A 16-year-old female at the time had 21 pending felony charges. And yet, when Columbus police announced Operation Game Over to crack down on these kids, not to crack down on black kids, not to crack down on any specific ethnicity or anything, even a gender or whatever, but just to crack down on criminals. Try to get a hold of them. They're making bad choices in their life, or they are tempted to, by the desperation in their homes, poverty, whatever, try to fix their issues in ways that are not healthy for them or the people that they're victimizing. When Columbus police tried to get their arms around that, the day after Operation Game Over was announced, Kim A. Brown and the 6 other juvenile court judges signed a letter saying that the police were trying to spread propaganda and fear. Here is the quote from their letter. The juvenile court judges, whose job it is to punish crime committed by young people so that young people don't engage in more crime, worse crime. The principle of sowing and reaping, as outlined by God, holds for all human endeavors. It holds for a farmer in the spring when he's planting his field. You get what you sow, more than you sow, later than you sow it. You plant corn in the spring, you get corn in the fall, later than you sow. You're not get beans in the fall if you plant corn, and you get a lot more than you planted. Well, the same thing works when it comes to crime. If you're engaged in criminal activity and you don't punish criminal activity, you're going to get more of it, and you're going to get more of it as time unfolds. And that is what has happened, and that is why Haley Abshire is dead today. Because Kim A. Brown and other juvenile court judges in this town do not care about juvenile crime. They care about getting re-elected. And they can't risk punishing crime committed by juveniles in this city, because the preponderance of juvenile criminals live in certain areas of the city where these judges are automatically reelected because they have a D next to their name. And so nothing's going to change. But here's what the judges wrote in their letter, calling Operation Game Over propaganda and fear. Our community should be weary of recent demands for the deleterious, oh, look at my education, and unnecessary detention of predominantly African-American youths and others residing in lower income areas of the county. These propaganda efforts smack of the widely debunked super predator myths of the 1990s. And every juvenile, you know who's the architect of that, by the way? Joe Biden. And every juvenile crime statistic available suggests that juvenile justice reforms implemented since that time have been more effective than the tough love approach suggested by less learned stakeholders. Well, then tell me, Kim A. Brown, tell me, juvenile court judges, why do we keep having a problem with stolen cars in our city? Why do we have, a couple months ago, a 14-year-old boy killed in a stolen car that he was driving? Why do we have 14-year-old Haley Abshire dead today? Because, obviously, you got a better answer, right? You got it all figured out.